Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Everybody ready? You need a moment? You all good? Okay. I'm a child of the late 50s and grew up in the 60s and 70s, and during that period of time and even the 80s and 90s, when you remember something, it was in your head. It was something that was up here and a memory was up there, and that's where the memories were. That's where we kept them. And it was a great system because they were all there, and if called upon to respond to a memory, a situation, an issue, the entire memory and its context will come tumbling out. Then we started doing something in the aughts and the 10s and the 20s where we started having these devices called cellular phones. And in those cellular phones, they have this thing on them called text messaging, where you can write down whatever's going through your head at the moment and send it. It's a great system. I mean, let's face it, we all use it because it works, and it works well, and it's very utilitarian, and we love it. But I think if we had a chance to think about it, we'd all admit that what you text isn't everything that's going on. That what you text doesn't tell the whole story. The text you sent today don't tell the whole story of your whole day. They just tell a portion of it. They tell a snippet. They tell a story. But they probably don't tell what happened to you from the time you got up and you couldn't find your left shoe to the time you're going to go to sleep tonight and wishing you had an extra slice of that pie for dessert. It doesn't tell you all that stuff, right? It tells you a snippet. It tells you a bit. It doesn't tell if you're mad or you're kidding or you're suggesting or you're tired or you didn't spell check before you sent it. So it says go when you want to say goat. It doesn't tell any of that stuff. It tells you a snippet. It tells you a portion. It tells you a particle. And that's what text messages do. The greatness of text messages are they're great. It's in the message. The weakness of them is they don't tell the whole story. And if someone were to grab someone's phone and look at what they did from a year and a half ago and try to figure out what they were thinking based on their text, they'd know that snippet, but they wouldn't know I'm venting. They wouldn't know that I don't take this serious. I don't mean this seriously. They wouldn't know that even though I'm mad at you, I still love you, because that the part in the text is going to be you didn't clean your room, and that's it, because that other part isn't with it. The other part, our communication, even when I speak to you right now, our communication is the words that come out of my mouth are only about 35% of what information you're taking in. You're watching my body language, you're listening to the sound of my voice, you're listening to the context, you're looking at the situation. That fills in the other information that you're going to need to have in order to figure out, with the most powerful computers that's known to man, our brains, what I really mean and what I'm really saying. If you have all you have is a text, ladies and gentlemen, it's like watching a movie with no picture. All you hear is the voices in the background. Somebody has to explain to you what else is going on in that scene. That's what we have here. We have a series of texts. We have a series of texts that people can select and jump around in terms of not just times and dates and times of day and without reflection on the circumstances. You're at work, you have time to send a 3-second text before the judge calls you and says, come do something else. Or you're sitting in your living room, you're reading a book, and you can take your time with these texts. It doesn't tell you any of that. So what comes out to you is a distorted picture. My suggestion, someone takes your text, what comes out to you is a distorted picture. It's not the whole story. It's not the whole situation. It doesn't tell the whole thing. All the texts that you've written do not tell you the whole story of your life. It tells you what they refer to that moment, and that's it. And the rest has to be inferred. If someone comes along and takes it out of context, and takes it out of circumstances, and it takes it out of where it existed at the time you sent it, You have a different story than what was intended. The communication you're getting is different than what you intended. That's problem number one. Problem number two is when you take those texts and you back them up with somebody who's highly motivated to lie. Ladies and gentlemen, they didn't have supercomputers back when they invented the theory of relativity. When Einstein, he didn't have a supercomputer. They hadn't been invented yet. What Einstein used to do famously, he used to call them thought experiments, where he'd imagine a situation and then he tried to think his way through. He was pretty good at it. He kind of changed life on the planet doing this. He kind of changed life on the planet. Now, you've been told that Paul's deal was that he had immunity from prosecution for whatever he talked about, and he'd get a sentencing recommendation or something like that. And there was one other thing, I forget, it doesn't matter. There's three things you were told he said. He's charged with child endangerment, child abuse in the first degree. Okay. And you were told that by our judge that you can believe all of what somebody says, part of what somebody says, or none of what somebody says. You were told that was Paul's deal. I'm going to invite you to it. And that Paul could be charged with first-degree murder, which Paul told you from the stand. I asked him, do you know what the penalty for that is? I sure do. He could be charged with first-degree. Now, I want you to do this thought experiment. You're a lawyer. You're Paul's lawyer in this thought experiment of my making. And the prosecutor calls you and say, I want to use your client to testify against his mom. And you say, okay. And then you have the client testify. And then he testifies, he does everything he's required to do, everything he wants, they want it, he gives them, everything he could, he gives them. And then at the end, once he's done testifying, his lawyer finds out they've charged his client with first-degree murder anyway. After all, that wasn't part of the deal, right? He could be charged with first-degree murder. Paul could be, theoretically, it's not part of the deal, could be charged with first-degree murder, even though he's fully performed. What would, in this thought experiment, what would your reaction be that you sent your client in, he did everything he was told, and he still gets charged with first-degree murder? Might I suggest to you that you might be a little upset with that? Might I suggest to you that if you were informed that after Paul has performed and you're his lawyer and he's still getting charged with first-degree murder, that you're going to be upset? And I further suggest that you're going to tell everybody, you're going to tell all of your defense friends, all your defense lawyers, you're going to tell them, this is what they did to me. When do you think the prosecutor is going to get another defense attorney to serve your client up again, if you did that? When do you think they're going to get another defense attorney in this county and your thought experiment to serve up their client if he does what he's supposed to do and he still gets charged in the circumstances like we've described? Well, you know what the answer is. You know what the answer is. In your thought experiment, you can figure out this is not going to happen. Because you know what's going to happen when the defense community is going to find out what happened with Paul and his testimony. He did what he's supposed to, still got charged with first-degree murder. He did what he's supposed to. He's not going to be able to get, the prosecution is not going to get another defense attorney to come forward and give up their client again. All right. This is part of something that's obvious, and it doesn't have to be in writing. Everybody, if you do the thought experiment, it's in writing. It's not in writing, but you can do the thought experiment. You can bet your house Paul's not going to get charged with first-degree murder. You can bet your house that Paul's deal is not his immunity. Paul's deal is that no first-degree murder. That's his deal. Paul is highly motivated to tell you the story that will keep him from getting that charge. And he did. Read his own text. Paul's the one who's talking about, I wish I could beat him up. I've never wanted to beat up somebody more in my life. Paul's the one who kicked in the door. Paul's the tormentor. Paul is the guy who's not only tormenting his brother, he's also enjoying it. And Paul is motivated to say now, and Paul testified against his mom. Paul tortured his brother. That's who Paul is. And Paul ain't going to be charged with first-degree murder. I don't care what the deal is. I think that should be obvious. So you got the two bits. You've got these text messages that give you a false and misleading representation of what people are thinking. You've got Paul sitting here talking for his life, talking his butt off. He's trying to get out from under. In fact, at one point I asked him, "Isn't it true you wrote a letter to your mom saying you wish it just ended all so you could get out of this thing?" And he said, "Yes, I did." That's who Paul is. Paul's also the nexus of information for my client. Yes, my client, he told my client one time that he thinks he's thin, we should feed him, but on another time, in fact, right before his death, Paul says, no, he's fine. Paul is the nexus of information. If you have those cameras, these security cameras in your home, you recognize those are great devices, and generally speaking, they do the job. But the kind of detail, the kind of vision that you need, you really need Paul there to augment that so that you get a full picture of what's going on. And Paul was there, and he was providing for my client. Third factor. I got a client that forgot everything. She forgot her name, if you were asked. She forgot everything, let's face it. Okay? When Mr. Roberts was given his open, and quite frankly, I've been doing this for 35 years. That's one of the finest openings I've ever heard. It was just wonderful. It was those kinds of things that lawyers appreciate because it was so well crafted and so well delivered. And he even gave you some poetry, and I'm no poet. I can't match that. I look for stuff, but I can't find anything like he did. It was just a wonderful opening. What I got for you is a little bit of physics. 20 years ago, 30 maybe, I read that the smallest bit of matter theoretically possible to exist in the universe would be about 2/100,000th of a billionth of a millimeter. And it would be a thing. It would be two-dimensional. It would be a thing that's so high energy that it could only exist for a brief moment in time. It exists and it pops out of existence again. I read that 30 years ago. I couldn't tell you the first name or last name of any of the people in this panel right now. It's not because it's not important. It's because that's the way memory works. I couldn't tell. That's the way memory works. It is not a logical construct where you remember things that you're supposed to, but you can forget the things you don't. Memory remembers what it wants to remember. Now you can do techniques and training and if something say is someone that causes a lot of adrenaline or something that burns the memory into your head, you remember that. You remember when your child was born because that's the sort of situation it is. But otherwise, memory has its own mind and it remembers what it wants and it forgets what it wants. And to say, well, she didn't remember these things. Well, yeah, she probably doesn't. You know, we talked about, and to use Mr. Roberts' example. At one moment, my client is talking about getting fries for the younger child, but getting hot sauce for the older child. And he talks about compartmentalizing. The brain is a sophisticated organism, it's a sophisticated panel. It will organize things according to whatever parameters that are there, but it will separate things out. And it is my argument. The argument we've made from the very beginning is that while part of her knew she was punishing this boy, none of her knew that she was hurting him. I understand. There's two possibilities. One, she's exactly what Mr. Roberts said, and that's evil. That's evil. Or the other possibility is there's something going on and she doesn't understand. She didn't understand, despite all the intelligence, she didn't understand the ultimate consequences of those individual acts of punishment. The accumulated force and power and weight of those individual acts of punishment. She didn't understand it. She didn't see it. I don't know how that could be. But to be honest with you, that's what makes sense. It makes sense because this is her son. And she raised other children, her own flesh and blood. She raised them and didn't do this sorts of things to them. Something was going on where she didn't understand it. This child was probably the highest needs. She didn't understand it. And her personal situation also makes a difference. Look, she took this child in when she wasn't supposed to have him because there was no other choice. So she did it. She raised another child. Paul has special. Paul's 20 years old and living at home with mom and working minimum wage. This is what Paul's doing. She has other child, and she has the demands of judges and lawyers, and she has the demands of education and the demands of ambitions, and her husband gets a stroke. These all make a difference. That's what I'm talking about context. Giving 4 slices of bread with hot sauce on it doesn't talk about she's thinking about her husband. The impact is how she's going to pay the rent. How she's going to get to work tomorrow. There's no gas in the car. These are all things that are going. There isn't a situation where she's sitting there just thinking about this one problem. She has too many problems to think about one. She's thinking about them all at a time. And pressure busts a pipe. It was too much. She didn't hate her child. That's what it would have taken to knowingly do this to your child. She would have to hate him. A child makes you angry. A child makes you frustrated. A child makes you tired. A child is willful. And she wasn't able to cope with it. And she didn't add it up. The bread plus the water plus the standing against the wall. She didn't add it up. And the mind is a powerful thing. She didn't see what we all saw. But let me. So this woman who doesn't love her son, according to the people, comes into a room and she says, "Timothy, please, no. Wake up. Come on, buddy. No. This can't happen. Is he okay? Is he okay? He's not stiff. Please, baby, come on. Open his jaw for me. Please, come on. Come on, buddy. You're okay. Come on, buddy. Come on, Timothy. I don't understand." To which Paul says, "I don't either. Come on, buddy. Come on, sweetie. Come on, buddy. Come back to us. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. Come on." Does she get scared of that? Yep. And lie to please. Hell yeah. She does. A lot. Because like Paul, she can see it now. Now, she doesn't have to do the math. The math is the body of her dead son. And they can both see it now. But as they were going through it, folks, they didn't see it. I don't think at the moment that they find the body and they says, I don't understand, and Paul says, I don't either. They were faking it for the camera or faking it for the police. They've forgotten all about the damn camera. They said those things because that was true. It's what you do in those moments of high stress. It's true. I didn't get this. I didn't see this coming. How could you not? They didn't. They didn't see it. Neither one of them saw it. Paul talked about, in his few moments of clarity, I loved my brother. I wish it was me instead of him. And that's how, did he start feeling that way afterward, or did he feel that way at the time? If he felt that way at the time, how could he do these things? Because he didn't know he was doing these things. You see where I'm going? How could he feel? I repeat, He said he'd give his life for his brother if he could. The question is, did he feel that way at the time he was doing these things to him? Well, how could he do those things to him if he felt that way? Because they didn't see it. These people committed manslaughter. That's what they did. They caused this boy's death, but they didn't intend to. That's simply it. We're asking that you, when you do your deliberations, that you consider that. I understand those pictures look like. I understand what they look like. I understand that everybody here wants justice for Timothy. I get that too. Justice is the conviction of a person for what they did, not for what they made us angry about, not what they made us sick about, not what they made us want to jump over that railing and take care of this thing ourselves. That's not what justice is. Justice is, this is what you did, and this is what you pay for. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.